My name's Brandon and this is Cartoon Network Video Game History, a show where I take a look back on all of the video games based on Cartoon Network shows and retrospectively review them. Samurai Jack is back. I think just about everybody was caught off guard earlier this year when Samurai Jack Battle Through Time was announced. The show aired its final season in 2017 after Genndy Tartakovsky was finally able to return to it and give it a proper send-off. So here we are 3 years later, and we're getting the first Samurai Jack game since Shadow of Aku way back during the show's first run. Released for the PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch and PC, it was also announced to be coming to Apple Arcade ridiculously close to launch. The hype for this game has been unlike anything I've ever seen for a Cartoon Network game. Personally, I think the current world situation has been beneficial for this game. New games and gaming news in general has been dry for most of this year, so people will take whatever they can get. This game has literally been plastered all over sites like IGN. It's absolutely nuts. It also probably helps that we're in a bit of a lull for game releases right now. PlayStation have already released their two big hitters, and there's nothing major on the slate until Avengers in September. The developers in charge of this Samurai Jack revival were Soleil. They're a Japanese developer who were only established quite recently. In their short history, they've developed Naruto to Boruto, Shinobi Striker, and assisted with the development of Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. Battle Through Time was also published by Adult Swim Games. This is yet another reminder that Cartoon Network literally has a legit publisher at their disposal, yet never seems to use them. Heck, they publish games under the Cartoon Network Games banner all the time. It seems wild that they don't put all of their publishing efforts for Cartoon Network titles under these internal companies. Surely it would save them a truckload of money. My personal history with Samurai Jack is a little interesting. As a kid, I would watch it whenever it came on, and I was absolutely enamored with it. I was honestly blown away by this show that would have entire episodes with very minimal dialogue. However, it wasn't until much later that I sat down and watched the entire series. After doing this, I discovered that I'm not a huge fan of the first 4 seasons. Maybe it's because I was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender simultaneously, but I found it supremely annoying that Samurai Jack didn't tell a continuous story. It got boring seeing Jack almost get back to the past in every damn episode. Season 5 was a bit of an improvement for me, but I can certainly say I don't have as much love for it as most people. As for the games, well, I've reviewed both of the previous entries on this channel. The Amulet of Time was pretty poor, but had some stunning visuals for a GBA game. Shadow of Aku, on the other hand, was really enjoyable. I believe I even said it was my favourite Cartoon Network game at the time. It's a very underrated title, which is why I found it shocking that Genndy Tartakovsky seems to have been shitting all over it in press interviews for this game. Shadow of Aku is great, Genndy. So yeah, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Samurai Jack, but I've pretty much experienced everything the series can offer. Which is a lot more than other reviewers can say. Not to sound too much like a whiny baby, but seeing other reviewers and YouTubers get review access despite never watching the show, or not even being knowledgeable about video games, is slightly annoying. But regardless, let's jump into Samurai Jack Battle Through Time and see if it can live up to the enormous hype it's built itself.
I must put an end to this madness.
Surprisingly, samurai games have been all the rage recently. Literally a month ago we got the incredible Ghost of Tsushima, which would be my game of the year so far if it wasn't for The Last of Us, and we've also seen titles like Sekiro and Nioh 2 in the past year. Samurai action is the hot ticket right now, so it seems like Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is striking at the perfect moment. However, Ghost, Sekiro and Nioh 2 are all ridiculously highly praised games. They all have average review scores in the mid to high 80s, being compared to these giants in the industry could actually hurt Samurai Jack. So what exactly is Samurai Jack Battle Through Time? Well, the pre-release marketing for the game has been majorly talking up that this is a canon Samurai Jack story. So much emphasis has been placed on the narrative, with Genndy Tartakovsky playing it up as if it's some extremely important thing that needed to be told. Essentially, this game serves as an alternative version of events that transpired in Season 5. Jack being sent through time goes haywire, and he's essentially trapped in between time by Aku. What transpires next is basically a Cliff Notes version of the entire story of the Samurai Jack show. Considering how much they were talking it up, it's not much to write home about. It's an alternate timeline story, basically a what-if scenario. The fact that they were calling this canon is absolutely ridiculous. I won't offer up any major spoilers in this review, but I'd wager that 90% of fans will feel let down by the story, and in particular, the very underwhelming ending. The whole thing is just one big excuse to bring back basically every notable Samurai Jack character. It plays out like a greatest hits version of the 5 seasons of the show. You go through every iconic location, meeting every iconic character. Again, they talk this story up so much, yet it's the same style of story almost every Cartoon Network game employs. The entire voice cast returns here, giving it the genuine feel of an episode. However, I was disappointed to learn that characters aren't voiced outside of cutscenes. So many times during the game you run into the Scotsman or Sir Rothschild and talk to them, but because it's not in a cutscene, they're completely silent. Visually, I don't mind what's on display here. It's nothing incredible, but I think it does a solid job recreating the show in 3D. Samurai Jack has a massively stylized look, so Soleil should be commended on finding something that works here. And while I'm not gushing over it, this is by far the best looking Cartoon Network game ever. To nobody's surprise, Battle Through Time is a pretty standard hack and slash game. It's very much in the same vein of Shadow of Aku from 2004. Square will deal out a quick attack, triangle winds up a strong attack, circle is a dash and dodge roll, L1 can block and parry attacks, and R3 locks you onto targets. As I said, pretty standard. You have no idea how relieved I was when I booted this up and the combat immediately felt fluid. It's far from the best feeling combat this genre has ever seen, but it works. Most importantly, it does feel like an upgrade over Shadow of Aku, but that should be a given considering Shadow of Aku is a 16-year-old game. It's pretty button mashy, then again what hack and slash isn't, however it's got a plethora of combos that make it feel satisfying. There's so many moves in your arsenal that you could genuinely just mash the controller and you'll be constantly seeing new moves. It makes the game very accessible and also helps combat repetition in the gameplay. Unfortunately, I think the blocking mechanic is a bit of a dud. Not once during my playthrough did I feel like I ever mastered the timing. To me, it felt like preventing enemy attacks from even happening was a much better solution. On your journey to slay Aku, you will obtain a great deal of ranged weapons like shuriken. These can be tossed out at enemies with the press of the right trigger. There's no dedicated aim for these types of weapons, which had the potential to be a disaster when trying to hit your desired enemy, but I found that generally the throws went exactly where you wanted it to most of the time. In addition, you also have swords, spears, axes, clubs, bow and arrows, guns, and even Jack's bare hands to utilize as you carve up robots. There are a buttload of fighting styles in this game. Under each of those categories I just mentioned, there are many different variants, all with varying stats. You can assign 4 of these weapons to the D-pad at any one time, allowing you to switch styles on the fly. The game boasts that different weapons are good for different situations, and this is evident to a degree. The scythe-type weapon was very handy for clearing out hordes of enemies that were bunched together closely, but outside of that I rarely saw benefits of using anything other than Jack's sword when it came to melee. By the halfway point I was pretty much exclusively using the sword, and I didn't notice any negative side effects. Also, no, I didn't misspeak before. Jack can mow down people with guns in this game. I can recall just a single time in the series that Jack used a gun, but Soleil seems to have taken that and absolutely ran with it. Seeing Jack murk fools with a handgun really is a sight to behold. But once the novelty of the guns wore off, I was left feeling weird about it. Selecting a gun and straight up murdering a boss with it felt so awkward. To me, it didn't seem like it was in the spirit of Samurai Jack. When Jack does commit mass murder, you'll find that enemies drop a ridiculous amount of pickups. First up is Dama. This is the pickup that will restore your health, while also temporarily increasing your strength and defense. One thing I should mention here, seeing as I brought up health, the game gives you a visual cue to the state of Jack's health in the form of his gi. As you take more damage, Jack's gi will be torn to shreds. Not only does this look cool as hell, but it's a genius way to let you keep track of your health in the middle of a fight. The action is frenetic and fast paced most of the time, so often you don't have the luxury of peeling your eyes away. Having Jack's outfit be destroyed was a perfect solution. The icing on the cake here is that the state of Jack's gi is always reflected in cutscenes. Finishing off a boss with a sliver of health is made so much more satisfying when the following cutscenes actually display the scars of what you went through. Next up is your Ki Fire. This is a meter you slowly build over time. Once it's full, Jack can unleash a powerful super move by pressing in the analog sticks. For every weapon type in the game, there's a unique super move, which genuinely impressed me. What seemed like a straightforward hack and slash has a little bit of depth under the hood. The third of the things you'll be picking up in Battle Through Time is Skill Fire. This is the game's name for skill points. In the pause menu, you'll discover an extensive skill tree, covering upgrades for physical, combat, and spiritual skills. It would be an understatement to say there are a shitload of skills at your fingertips. I was super OCD about smashing all barrels and pots to get extra skill fire, and even then I still barely scratched the surface of the skill tree. Some of this does have to do with the extra requirements necessary for some of the upgrades though. As you move deeper into the tree, you'll need Bushido Spirit, another thing you pick up from enemies, and various items that are handed to you by NPCs. Bushido Spirit in particular causes some issues. In comparison to Skillfire, you acquire Bushido so slowly. After the halfway point, upgrades become so rare because you need so much of the stuff. It was supremely frustrating to have enough skill points to upgrade half a dozen things, but be held back by this extra condition. Finally, the last of the 10 gajillion things you pick up from defeated enemies is gold.
I love gold!
This is obviously pretty self-explanatory, it's the game's currency. In each level you encounter the samurai in multiple locations, and he just so happens to be running a shop. Here you can buy healing and stat buff items, new weapons and their ammo, upgrade your different weapon types, and repair weapons too. Every weapon in this game degrades, except your sword, which sounds a lot worse than it is in practice, especially if you rely mostly on your sword. Even by the end of the game, I was still kind of overwhelmed about how much was going on. It took a lot to keep track of everything I was collecting. It's all just a little too much. At the very least, Bushido's spirit should have been axed. It serves no real purpose. Additionally, it even feels like there's too much going on with the weapons. You have so many classes of weapons, with plenty of weapons falling within those classes. My head was spinning at times, and as a result of it all, you feel like you are constantly interrupting the gameplay to jump into the pause menu and mess around with equipping a weapon or making an upgrade. It just hurts the flow and pacing of the gameplay. In the end, Samurai Jack Battle Through Time's gameplay gives the impression that Soleil threw every single idea at the wall, hoping some of it would stick. This results in a couple of things. On one hand, the combat feels quite deep and has plenty of variety. On the other, the overabundance of stuff going on can be overwhelming, particularly when first starting, and too often it feels like overkill. If all of that wasn't enough, there are mini gameplay challenges you can do to get extra bonuses. These are usually simple, like killing X amount of a certain enemy type, but it's yet another thing to chuck on top of the gameplay pile. Also, I wasn't really sure where to mention this, but the wall climbing is absurdly slow. Who looked at this and thought it was okay? General moment-to-moment gameplay is pretty mixed. It has its great moments and it has its awful moments. What was most disheartening to me was how poor the boss battles are. Never once did they feel anything other than awful and unenjoyable. Every single one of the 9 end-of-level boss battles falls into one of 2 categories. Either they were super clunky, or could be easily defeated by spamming a ranged weapon. The clunky boss battles are just that, clunky. There's no real flow to them, and it never feels like there's a specific way you should be approaching it. The boss battles made easy by ranged weapons might just be worse though. These fights made the entire slog through the levels feel completely pointless. I was baffled by how many bosses could be destroyed by sitting back and just holding down fire as Jack unloads a machine gun clip into some jerk. Heck, I managed to chip off half to 3/4 of Aku's health in the final boss battle purely through guns, arrows, and throwable weapons. Something about all that just doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't feel like Samurai Jack. When you think of the show, your mind doesn't drift to Jack shooting people, or even him using a bow and arrow. You think of him and his trusty sword. Yet, I came pretty close to destroying Aku without pulling it out. The one boss battle that kind of belongs in its own space is Demongo. You face Demongo in almost every level. The battle is always the same, and he always throws out the same 3 canned lines of dialogue. It's massive overkill, and it reeks of padding. You then face him for a final time in the last level, with this being a much longer version of the same fight you've already done a bunch. In pre-release interviews, some of the developers discussed the length of Battle Through Time, with one developer claiming it would take you around 10 hours. This was seemingly backed up by some reviewers on launch day. A number of them stated that it will take you 8 to 10 hours to complete. However, there were others claiming it would take you just 5. There's a pretty big gap between 5 hours and 10 hours. Where did my playthrough manage to fall on this spectrum? Well, I was firmly in the 5-hour camp. Having played the game myself, I cannot believe it would take somebody 10 hours to beat this. I'll set the scene for you. There are 9 levels in this game. So for somebody to spend 10 hours beating this game, they would need to take over an hour on every single level. How long did levels take for me to beat them? Quite literally never longer than 30 to 40 minutes. How on earth a reviewer could walk away from this game saying it's 10 hours long is baffling. You can beat the whole game twice in that time. For comparison, most of the full game playthroughs of Shadow of Aku on YouTube have a runtime of 4 hours, while on the website How Long to Beat, the average playthrough is 5 hours. Look, game length isn't everything, and Lord knows I love a shorter game now that I'm an adult and don't have unlimited free time. But I can't hide my disappointment at this game being basically the same length as Shadow of Aku. This was supposed to be the game changer, the holy grail of cartoon video games. Gendy was shitting on the previous titles and saying this one was mind-blowing. So to finish my playthrough in just 5 hours actually caught me off guard, especially because this game costs $60 in Australia. You can buy brand new AAA games on release day for $69 here. I have no idea how they're getting away with this in 2020. If you're going to buy this game, make sure you weigh up the amount of content against that hefty price tag.
I am ready, Aku.
This isn't the greatest Cartoon Network game of all time like developer, publisher, and games media hype would have you believing in the lead up to release. In fact, it's not even the best Cartoon Network game released in the past year. Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is ultimately a very mixed bag, and in many ways pretty similar to my feelings on Shadow of Aku. The two games are basically on par with each other, with Battle Through Time being slightly better just because it's a newer release and slightly more polished. I can't act like Battle Through Time matching the quality of Shadow of Aku isn't a letdown though. Shadow of Aku is almost 20 years old. This game should have absolutely mopped the floor with it. When Battle Through Time is good, it's really good, but when it's bad, it's unforgivably bad. So should you, the person watching this video, buy the game? Well, there's a few things you need to look at. Firstly, like I already mentioned, it's important to take a look at the price and how short this game is. Personally, I would be waiting for a big discount considering you can knock this one out in 1 or 2 sittings. It's also hard to properly judge how much a person will enjoy Battle Through Time's gameplay. So much relies on you clicking with the gameplay and connecting with it early on. If you don't start vibing with the combat, then it's going to be a long slog. And that's a wrap for my Samurai Jack Battle Through Time review. If you've got any lingering questions about the game that I didn't answer in the video, be sure to leave a comment below. Next time on Cartoon Network Video Game History, I'll be taking a look at Steven Universe Unleash the Light, the final game in the Light trilogy. If you're new to the channel, I absolutely adored the first 2 games in this series, so I'm extremely excited to see what the finale is like. I'd also like to confirm that yes, I have managed to get Dexter's Laboratory Mandark's Lab successfully running. That means 2 weeks from now, Mandark's Lab will be the finale of Cartoon Network Video Game History, and the following week will be the premiere of Nickelodeon Video Game History. It's an extremely exciting time here at Cartoon Review. To make sure you don't miss out on any of it, hit that subscribe button.